When Claire moved into the old crumbling apartment complex on the edge of town, she thought it would be a fresh start. The rent was cheap, the neighborhood quiet, and the other tenants seemed harmless enough. But there was one neighbor who made her skin crawl, the man in apartment 4B. From the moment she arrived, Claire noticed him. He was tall and gaunt, with hollow eyes that seemed to follow her every move. He never spoke, not even a polite hello, and he never left his apartment during the day. At night, she would hear faint shuffling sounds through the thin walls, as if he were pacing back and forth, waiting for something. Claire tried to ignore him, but the feeling of being watched never went away. She would catch glimpses of him standing in his window, staring out at her as she came and went. Sometimes, she would wake in the middle of the night to the sound of faint scratching, like nails dragging across the wall between their apartments. She told herself it was just the building settling, but deep down, she knew better. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Claire decided to confront her unease. She knocked on the door of apartment 4B, her heart pounding in her chest. There was no answer, but the door creaked open slightly, revealing a sliver of darkness. Against her better judgment, she pushed it open and stepped inside. The apartment was cold and dimly lit, the air thick with the smell of mildew and something else, something metallic. The furniture was old and covered in dust, as if no one had lived there for years. But the walls? The walls were covered in photographs. Hundreds of them, all of Claire. Some were recent, taken from outside her window or through the peephole in her door. Others were older, much older. Photos of her as a child, as a teenager, even ones she didn't remember being taken. Her breath caught in her throat as she realized the truth. He had been watching her for years, long before she moved into the building. He had been waiting for her. Before she could turn and run, the door slammed shut behind her. She spun around, her heart racing, and there he was, the man from 4B. His hollow eyes bore into hers, and for the first time he spoke. His voice was low and guttural, like the growl of an animal. "You shouldn't have come in here," he said, taking a step closer. "But now that you're here, you'll never leave." Claire tried to scream, but no sound came out. The walls seemed to close in around her, the photographs staring down at her like accusing eyes. She stumbled backward, her hands groping for something, anything, to defend herself. But there was nothing. The man lunged at her, his hands cold and claw-like as they closed around her throat. She fought with everything she had, but he was impossibly strong. As the world faded to black, she heard his voice one last time, whispering in her ear, "I've always been here, and now, so will you." When Claire didn't show up for work the next day, her co-workers assumed she had finally taken a day off. No one thought to check on her. No one noticed the faint scratching sounds coming from the walls of apartment 4B, and no one saw the new photograph that appeared on the wall, a picture of Claire, her eyes wide with terror, as the man from 4B stood behind her, smiling,